The desert doesn't keep secrets. It buries them. For Ilara Vance, the Arizona Territory was a place of shallow graves and long shadows. She ran the Jackrabbit Springs way station, a forgotten speck on a map of dust, her life defined by the husband she'd buried. But on a Tuesday, scorched by the sun, a new shadow fell. A man, bleeding, collapsed at her door, whispering a name that should have been dead. He was a Navajo Heir, hunted. By dawn, the masked riders came. They didn't want money. They didn't want water. They wanted a truth Ilara never knew she had. The heat was a physical weight. It pressed down on the corrugated tin roof of the way station, making the air inside Ilara Vance's small office shimmer. Jackrabbit Springs was a lonely monument to hope, 20 miles south of the main Wells Fargo line and 10 miles north of nothing at all. It was just her, the howling wind, and the ghosts. Ilara was cleaning the bore of her Winchester 73, the steel cool against her calloused palms. She was a woman carved from the landscape, tough, lean, and worn smooth in all the wrong places. It had been a year since the stampede had taken her husband, Elias, and left her with nothing but his debts and this dry gulch way station. A sound broke the afternoon stillness, not the usual skitter of a lizard or the cry of a hawk. It was the agonizing, slow hoofbeat of a foundered horse. She moved to the door, the Winchester heavy and familiar in her grip. Through the shimmering haze, a figure approached. The horse was a lathered mess, its head hung low. The rider was slumped over the pommel, clinging to the mane with a desperation that was about to fail. He didn't make it to the porch. The man slid from the saddle, landing in a heap of dust and leather. The horse, finally relieved of its burden, staggered 3 steps and collapsed, its breath coming in ragged, dying wheezes. Ilara was at the man's side in a second, her rifle aimed at the horizon. No one. No posse. Just the man. She rolled him over. He was Navajo, dressed not in traditional skins, but in fine, albeit ruined, trousers and a white linen shirt soaked in blood. The wound was low in his gut, a messy, dark stain that smelled of copper and death. His face was aristocratic, high-cheekboned, and streaked with sweat and grime. He couldn't have been more than 25. His eyes flickered open, the pupils pinpricked against the bright sky. He tried to speak, a dry rasp. "Water!" he choked. Ilara didn't move. "Who's after you?" "Brazos! Men!" he gasped, the words tearing from him. He fumbled at a leather satchel tied to his belt. "Croft." Ilara's blood ran cold. Silas Croft, the Box C Ranch. His Brazos Cattle Company was less a ranch and more a private army that swallowed up land and spat out skeletons. They owned the sheriff in the nearest town, and, it was whispered, half the territorial legislature. The man's eyes fixed on her, pleading. "Please, I am Thomas Begay. I have to reach Tucson." "You're not reaching anything but the next world," Ilara said, her voice flat. "No," he said. The man's hand clutched at his neck, pulling at a silver locket on a leather thong. He said, "Jackrabbit Springs." He said, "Trust Ilara." Ilara froze. The Winchester's weight suddenly felt unbearable. "Who?" she whispered, her voice tight. "Who said to trust me?" Thomas Begay's eyes rolled back. He didn't answer. He just offered the locket, his fingers too weak to unclasp it. He said, "Elias sent me." The name hit Ilara like a physical blow. Elias, her dead husband. The world tilted. She grabbed the Navajo Heir, Thomas Begay, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and sudden, icy fear. She dragged him, all 170 pounds of dead weight, across the dusty yard and into the relative cool of the main house. She barred the thick oak door, slammed the crossbeam into place, and laid him on the cot where Elias used to sleep. She had to get the bullet out. But as she tore his shirt away, she saw it wasn't just a bullet. The wound was ragged, and beneath the blood, the skin was blackened and swollen. It wasn't just a gunshot, it was poisoned, or the bullet was fouled. "They're coming," Thomas whispered, his body starting to tremble with fever. "They want the locket." Elara looked at the silver locket, now clutched in her own hand. It was warm from his skin. "What's in it?" "The truth," he breathed. And then, as if summoned, a sound drifted on the evening air. Far off, but getting closer. The unmistakable rhythm of multiple riders. They weren't waiting. They were coming now. Elara ran to the window, peering through the twilight. On the far ridge, silhouetted against the bruised purple sky, were 5 riders. They weren't coming for water. They weren't coming for shelter. They were coming for the man on her cot, and the locket in her hand. Darkness fell, but it brought no peace. Elara worked with grim, mechanical efficiency. She wedged Thomas Begay into the small, hidden storm cellar beneath the main room's floorboards, a space Elias had dug for storage. It was cramped, smelled of cured meats and damp earth, and was the only place in the house not immediately obvious. "Stay silent," she ordered the feverish man, "no matter what you hear. No matter what they do." He just stared at her, his eyes bright with pain. "Elias didn't stampede," he muttered, before the laudanum she'd forced down his throat finally took him. Elara's hands were shaking. Elias didn't stampede. The words echoed the darkest doubts she had harbored for a year. She spent the next few hours preparing. She extinguished the main lamp, leaving only a small candle in the back room. She laid out her Winchester on the bar, along with a box of 4440 cartridges. She placed Elias's old Colt Peacemaker on her hip and a small 2-shot Derringer in her apron pocket. She was one woman against 5, but this was her ground. Every creaking floorboard, every warped piece of timber was an ally. The riders didn't come at night. They were smart. They waited. Dawn broke cold and grey. Elara was sitting at the bar, nursing a cup of black, bitter coffee, when they arrived. They didn't ride in fast. They approached at a walk, a casual, arrogant procession that spoke of total confidence. Elara stepped onto the porch, the Winchester held loosely in her arms, muzzle down. There were 5 of them. 4 were typical hard cases, all dust and leather and mean eyes. The 5th, their leader, was different. He rode a magnificent black stallion and wore a long grey duster, like a preacher. His face was hidden by a dusty bandana, but his eyes, pale and sharp, studied her. The way station, the collapsed horse in the yard. He dismounted, his boots making no sound in the soft dust. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was not the gravelly bark of a cowboy. It was educated, smooth, and laced with iron. "You are Mrs. Elara Vance." It wasn't a question. "I am," Elara said. "This is private property. State your business and move on." The leader chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "We are travelers. We saw your sign. We seek refreshment, and we are looking for a man." "No one's come through here in a week," Elara lied. Her heart was a cold hammer against her ribs. The man, whom the others called Slade, walked slowly toward the dead horse. He nudged it with his boot. "This horse says otherwise, Mrs. Vance. This is a fine animal, or was. An Appaloosa from the Red Mesa lands. Belongs to the Begay family." He turned, his pale eyes pinning her. "A young man, a Navajo, riding this horse, passed this way. He's bleeding." "I see a lot of men," Elara said, gripping the Winchester. "None of them your concern." Slade smiled, though the bandana didn't move. "We are not lawmen, ma'am. We are associates of Mr. Silas Croft. We are retrieving stolen property. The man you're hiding is a thief and a murderer. He's not here." "Then you won't mind," Slade said, nodding to his men, "if we search the premises. Silas is a very particular man. He likes his property returned." "You take one step inside," Ilara said, raising the rifle to her hip, "and I'll see what color your insides are." The four men tensed, their hands dropping to their holsters. Slade held up a gloved hand. He sighed, a dramatic, put-upon sound. "Mrs. Vance, Ilara. May I call you Ilara? We know about your husband, Elias, a tragedy, that stampede." Ilara's finger tightened on the trigger. "Get off my land." Slade's voice lost its smooth, educated tone. It became a razor. "The man you are hiding, Thomas Begay, he has something that belongs to Mr. Croft. We will take it. We will take him. You have two choices. You can give him to us, and we will pay you $500 for your trouble." "And the second choice?" "The second choice," Slade said, his eyes glittering, "is that we burn this way station to the ground, with you inside it, and we take him anyway." He gestured to the sky. "It's 7 in the morning. I'm a patient man. I will give you until noon. At noon," he pointed to the barn, "we will set fire to that tinder box, then your stable, then this house. Give us the Navajo, Ilara. Don't die for a man who isn't your people." He turned, mounted his horse, and with his 4 men, rode back 50 yards. They dismounted, made a small fire, and began to wait. They were a firing squad, and she was their target. Ilara backed into the house, barred the door, and leaned against it, her body shaking. Elias didn't stampede. She slid to the floor, pulling the silver locket from her pocket. Her hands, rough and stained, fumbled with the clasp. It was old, Spanish silver. She pressed the catch. It sprang open, and her world ended. Again. The locket didn't hold a portrait of a beautiful Navajo woman or a lock of a child's hair. It held 2 things. One side contained a tiny, intricately folded map, sketched on thin parchment. It showed a canyon, a series of switchbacks, and a star marking a spot labeled Agua Escondida, hidden water, a spring. In the middle of the San Pedro Valley, a spring like that wasn't just life. It was a kingdom. The other side of the locket was not a map. It was a key, a small brass key, etched with a number, 217. Ilara stared at it, her mind racing. A map to a spring? A key to... What? She heard a groan from beneath the floor. She lifted the heavy rug, pulled up the floorboards, and stared down into the darkness. Thomas Begay was staring back, his face a mask of sweat. "They're still out there," she said. "I know." He coughed, a terrible, wet sound. "Slade, that's his name. He's Crofts." "He said you were a thief," Ilara said, her voice hard. "He said you had something of Crofts. He offered me $500. Did you take it?" "I'm here, ain't I?" Ilara snapped. She climbed down into the cellar, bringing the smell of coffee and fear with her. She lit a small lantern. The cellar was tiny, just big enough for 2 people to sit. She held up the locket. "What is this?" Tom looked at the locket, then at her. His fever was high, but his eyes were sharp. "That," he said, "is my inheritance, and your husband's." Ilara's breath caught. "You're lying." "Am I?" Tom pushed himself up against a stack of crates. "Your husband, Elias Vance. He wasn't just a simple homesteader. He was a surveyor, the best in the Arizona Territory." "I know what he was," Ilara said. "No, you don't." Tom's voice was getting stronger, fueled by anger. Did you ever wonder why he, a man who could read maps in the stars, died in a cattle stampede, a stampede of his own cattle? They said a snake spooked the herd, Ilara recited, the words tasting like ash. It wasn't a snake, Tom said. It was Silas Croft. My father, Harrison Begay, was a leader. He believed in peace. He partnered with the whites. He and Elias. They found the spring, Agua Escondida. It's on my father's treaty land, but Elias filed the claim legally under the U.S. government. They were partners. They were going to build a new town for Navajo and for white settlers, a place of their own. Your husband and my father. I don't believe you. But she did. It made a terrible, awful sense. Elias had been secretive in his last months. Long trips to Tucson, money she couldn't account for. Croft found out, Tom continued, his voice weakening. A spring like that, it would break his monopoly on the entire valley. He controls the San Pedro River. If someone else has water, his cattle empire is worthless. So he offered to buy. My father refused. Elias refused. So Croft sent Slade. Slade, Ilara whispered, the name tasting like poison. The man in the preacher's coat. He's no preacher, Tom spat. He's Croft's executioner. They murdered my father. Made it look like sickness. And then, a month later, they murdered Elias. They ran his own cattle over him in a box canyon. They made it look like an accident. I was the only one left. The heir. So they came for you. Yes, they ambushed me 3 days ago. I thought I'd lost them. I was trying to get to Tucson. That key, he pointed to the locket. It's for a Wells Fargo box in Tucson. Elias put something there. Proof. Proof of what? Everything. Tom slumped, the fever taking him again. The original treaty, the survey maps, and a ledger. Elias was smart. He suspected Croft was moving on him. He kept Croft's other set of books. He was Croft's surveyor, yes, but he was also his bookkeeper. Ilara's world, which had been cracked, now shattered. Her gentle, quiet husband wasn't just a rancher. He was a spy, a partner. A man who had been playing a game so dangerous it got him killed, and he had left her in the dark. No, that wasn't true. Elias sent me. He said to trust Ilara. Elias hadn't left her in the dark. He had left her as his last line of defense. He had trusted that this man, Thomas Begay, could find her. And he had trusted that she... What? What could she do? Slade doesn't want the map, Tom whispered. He doesn't know about the key. He wants the ledger. He thinks I have it. But Elias, he sent it to Tucson. He trusted you. He told me, if I fall, go to Ilara. She's stronger than any of us. She's the rock. Ilara closed her hand around the key and the map. Stronger. Elias had always said that. She felt a familiar, cold rage build in her chest. It was the same rage that had gotten her through the year. But now, it had a name. It had a face. Silas Croft. Preacher Slade. They killed him, she said. The words a low growl. Yes, Tom said. They killed my husband. She climbed out of the cellar. She looked at the clock. 10:08 a.m. 2 hours until noon. They think they're hunting, she said to the empty room. They don't know what a real hunt is. She put the locket around her own neck, tucking it under her shirt. She checked the loads in her Winchester. She went to Elias's old trunk and pulled out the one thing she had never pawned, a box of dynamite. The sun was a white-hot coin at high noon. The heat in the small way station was suffocating. Ilara stood by the window, a slit in the thick adobe wall, watching Slade and his men. They were fanned out, their rifles ready. A voice, thin and reedy, called out, "Time's up, Mrs. Vance. Send out the Navajo." Ilara remained silent. "All right," the voice called. "Burn the barn, boys." Two of the men ran toward the barn, carrying torches. Ilara lined up her sights. She didn't aim for the men. She aimed for the torch. Crack! The Winchester bucked against her shoulder. The torch exploded in a shower of sparks, and the man carrying it screamed, dropping it and clutching his hand. "She's armed!" "You think?" Slade's iron voice cut through the air. "Get under cover! Flank her!" The fight began. It was not a noble, face-to-face duel. It was a brutal, ugly, territorial defense. Ilara was a master of her own space. She knew which window gave the best angle on the stable, which floorboard squeaked near the front door. Crack! A bullet slammed into the adobe wall next to her, sending dust and plaster into her eyes. She moved, firing from the front window, dropping low and moving to the side window. She was a ghost in her own home. "She's in the kitchen," one man yelled. Crack! He was wrong. She was in the pantry. Her shot tore through the thin wall of the outhouse he was using for cover. A yelp of pain. "I'm hit! Damn it, Slade, I'm hit!" "Stay down!" Slade roared. He was smarter than his men. He was staying behind a thick water trough, directing traffic. "She can't be in two places at once. Jed, get the side. We rush her on 3. Ilara's heart was pounding, the adrenaline making the world slow and sharp. She heard a scraping sound on the tin roof. Climbing. She looked up. A trickle of dust fell from the rafters. She grabbed the Colt Peacemaker from her hip, aimed it at the ceiling, and fired 2 shots. A heavy thud as a body rolled off the roof and hit the ground. 4 riders left. "She got Charlie!" "Forget the house!" Slade roared, his patience finally breaking. "Burn it! Burn it all!" The 2 men at the barn, including the one she'd hit, had regrouped. They lit their torches again and ran. This time they didn't hesitate. They threw the torches onto the dry hay piled against the barn doors. The barn went up like a matchbox. A terrible, high-pitched screaming started. Her horses. Her last 2 horses. Ilara cried out, a sound of pure anguish. That was it. That was the line. They could take the land, the house, but not her animals. Rage, black and pure, took over. "They're burning the barn!" she yelled down into the cellar. "I'm going out the back. I'm getting a horse. They've got the house surrounded. I'm going to create a diversion. When I do, you run." "Ilara, no!" Tom's voice was weak. "Shut up and live," she snapped. "Get to Tucson. Get that ledger. Don't you dare let my husband die for nothing." She grabbed the stick of dynamite. She lit the long fuse, counted to 5, and hurled it out the front window. "Fire in the hole!" she screamed. The men yelled, scrambling for cover. The explosion was deafening. It shattered the front of the way station, sending splinters and adobe bricks flying. Slade's water trough disintegrated. In the chaos of smoke and dust, Ilara bolted out the back door. She ran for the small stable where she kept her personal mare, Bess. The fire from the barn was already licking at its side. She burst in, coughing. Bess was screaming, terrified. "Easy, girl, easy," Ilara soothed, cutting the rope. A shadow fell across the doorway. It was Slade. His hat was gone, his face was black with soot, and his pale eyes were filled with murder. "You," he hissed, "you troublesome bitch." He raised his revolver. Ilara didn't hesitate. She didn't have her rifle. She didn't have her Colt. She had the Derringer in her apron. She fired both barrels. The small bullets were not enough to kill a man his size, not instantly. But they hit him in the chest, staggering him. He looked down, surprised. Click! His gun. Misfired. Clogged with dust from the explosion. Ilara grabbed a pitchfork. "This," she screamed, "is for Elias." She plunged it into his chest, pinning him to the stable wall. He gurgled, blood pouring from his mouth, his eyes wide with shock. He slid down the tines. Dead! The way station was burning. The barn was a funeral pyre. Slade's men were yelling, confused, leaderless. Elara mounted Bess, pulling the mare out of the burning stable. She looked back at the house. Smoke was pouring from the cellar hatch. "Tom!" she screamed. "Tom, run!" Thomas Begay stumbled out, clutching his side, the locket in his hand. "Where?" he gasped. "Get on," she yelled, hauling him up behind her. 1 horse, 2 people, 100 miles of desert. "Which way?" he choked. "To Tucson," Elara yelled, digging her heels into the mare. "We finish what Elias started." The 3 remaining riders saw them. They opened fire, but Elara and Tom were already gone, a cloud of dust and smoke, their only tombstone, riding south into the unforgiving land, carrying a map, a key, and a truth that could burn the entire territory to the ground. The desert was a furnace. They rode Bess until the mare was nearly broken. Then they walked. Elara's grief for her home was a cold, hard knot in her stomach. The Jackrabbit Springs way station, her prison and her sanctuary, was gone. The smoke plume was visible for hours, a dark pillar marking her past. Now, there was only the future. A future measured in miles to Tucson. Tom was a liability. His fever raged, and the gut wound, which Elara had cleaned and packed with herbs, was festering. He was strong. He walked when he could, his hand gripping the saddle horn, his face pale and set. But he was fading. "We have to stop," Elara said on the second day. They were in a dry arroyo, the cracked mud and sparse salt cedar providing the only cover for miles. "No," Tom panted. "They're behind us." Elara looked back. She hadn't seen a dust cloud. "How do you know?" "You can't see him," Tom whispered. "But he's there. Croft doesn't rely just on Slade. He has a tracker, a Papago man. They call him Coyote Jim. He can track a shadow across solid rock." Elara scanned the horizon again, her eyes sharp. "I see nothing." "That's why he's good," Tom said. He slid down the embankment, his legs giving out. "He's just waiting for us to make a mistake." He was right. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple, Elara saw him. A flicker of movement on a ridge 2 miles back. A man on foot. He was moving parallel to them, patient. He wasn't trying to catch them. He was herding them. "He's pushing us," Elara said, her voice grim. "He's pushing us east, toward the main road." "Where Croft's men will be waiting," Tom finished. "He's a wolf, cutting the weak from the herd." "Then we don't Vance run," Elara said. "We hide." She looked at the failing mare. She looked at the dying man. Her options were bleak. "Give me your shirt," she said. "What?" "Your shirt. Give it to me." Confused, Tom stripped off his torn, bloody linen shirt. Elara tied it to Bess's saddle. "What are you doing?" "A tracker follows a trail," Elara said. She ripped a strip from her own petticoat and tied it around Tom's wound, a makeshift bandage. "We're going to give him a trail to follow." She slapped the mare hard on the rump. Go on, Bess." The horse, relieved of its burden and sensing freedom, trotted off, heading south along the arroyo. "He'll follow the horse," Elara said. "But that was our only—" "He'll follow the scent," Elara corrected. "The blood on your shirt. He'll think we're still on the horse. It'll buy us time." "Time for what?" Tom coughed, sinking against the rocks. "To die here." "Time to rest," Elara said. She unslung her Winchester. "We're not going east. We're not going south. We're going west, into the devil's spine. He won't follow us in there." "He will," Tom said. "He knows. There's water in there. 1 small tenaya. He'll trap us there." "Good," Elara said, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Let him." They moved by night. It was a hellish journey. The Devil's Spine was a maze of volcanic rock and cholla cactus. Ilara practically carried Tom the last mile. They found the Tanaja, a small, natural rock tank, filled with murky, life-saving water. They drank, they rested, and they waited. Ilara found her spot, a high V in the rocks, overlooking the only approach to the water. She laid the Winchester on the stone, checking her ammunition. She had 22 rounds left. "You're going to fight him?" Tom whispered from the shadows where she'd hidden him. "I'm going to end this," she said. He came at dawn, just as she knew he would. Coyote. Jim was everything Tom had said. He moved like a snake, silent, his body painted in dust and clay, blending perfectly with the rocks. He wasn't looking at the Tanaja. He was looking around it. He knew it was a trap. He was looking for the rifle. He was looking for her. Ilara didn't move. She didn't breathe. She was the rock. He was 50 yards out. Too far for a clean shot. He circled. "Come on," Ilara thought. "You're thirsty. You've been tracking us for 2 days." He moved. He was patient. He sat for 10 minutes, perfectly still. Ilara's arms ached from holding the rifle. He must have decided she wasn't there, that she'd taken water and run. He moved toward the Tanaja, his own rifle held at the ready. He was 20 yards. He knelt by the water, but his eyes never stopped scanning. Ilara let out a breath, found her sight. The V of the rifle settled on his chest. She didn't want to kill him. He was just a man doing a job. She fired. The shot was perfect. She didn't hit him. She hit the rock an inch from his head. The bullet ricocheted with a high-pitched whine, sending stone splinters into his face. He screamed, dropping his rifle and clutching his eyes. He stumbled back, blind, and fell. Ilara was on him in a second, the butt of her rifle raised. "Don't," she said. He was on the ground, whimpering, blood streaming from a dozen small cuts on his face. My eyes. "They're fine," Ilara said, kicking his rifle away. "But they won't be, if you don't tell me the truth. How many more? Between here and Tucson?" I don't know," he moaned. Ilara cocked the Winchester and pressed the muzzle to his forehead. "Please, lady. Okay. Croft has the whole town locked down. He's got Sheriff Black on his payroll, the Tucson sheriff. He's waiting for you at the Wells Fargo. He's got men at every entrance to the city. You can't get in." "The Wells Fargo," Ilara said, her blood running cold. The trap wasn't on the trail. The trap was at the destination. "What's in the box, lady?" the tracker pleaded. "What's worth all this?" "My husband's life," Ilara said. She ripped a strip of cloth from his shirt and tied his hands. What are you doing?" "I'm leaving you," Ilara said. "The water is there. Your rifle is broken. My guess is you'll live. Now, tell me about Sheriff Josiah Black." Tucson was a sprawling, chaotic mess of adobe, canvas, and new-cut timber. It was a town choking on its own rapid growth, a place where fortunes were made at noon and lives were lost by sundown. Ilara and Tom arrived, not as avengers, but as beggars. They had stolen a burro from a mining camp. Ilara had traded her Winchester for the burro, a tattered blanket, and a basket of dried chilies. She now looked the part of a poor widow, come to town to sell her wares. Tom, his face hidden under a wide-brimmed sombrero, looked like a half-dead peon she'd hired to help. The tracker's information had been invaluable. They didn't enter by the main road. They came in from the west, following the dry riverbed, and slipped into the maze of alleys that made up the barrio. "The Wells Fargo is on Congress Street," Tom whispered. He was walking, but just barely, leaning on the burro. "It's the biggest building in town." And Black will be watching it, Ilara said. He's watching for a beaten-up widow and a wounded Navajo. So what do? We give him what he's looking for. Just not where he's looking. Ilara sold the burro and the chilies in the market for $3. She used $1 to buy them a room in the filthiest, most anonymous flophouse in the barrio. She used the other $2 for a transformation. She bought a garish, bright yellow dress from a Chinese laundry, a feathered hat that had seen better days, and a jar of cheap, rose-scented powder. She washed the grime from her face, pinned up her hair, and applied the powder. When she emerged, she was no longer Ilara Vance, the grieving widow. She was Annabelle, a saloon girl down on her luck. What a... You, Tom muttered from the cot. A distraction, Ilara said. She pulled the Colt Peacemaker from her bag, checking it. The tracker said Black is waiting at the Wells Fargo. He's waiting for us. But he's not the only one who can set a trap. She left Tom in the room with the derringer and a bottle of whiskey. Don't die, she said. Don't you? He replied. Ilara walked onto Congress Street. The sun was high. The street was bustling. She saw them immediately. Two men, trying to look casual, leaning against the post office, their eyes never leaving the doors of the Wells Fargo. She walked past the bank. She went into the Criterion Hotel, the most expensive hotel in the territory. She walked to the front desk. The clerk, a pinched-faced man named Abernathy, looked her up and down. "Rooms are $5, ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with disdain for her cheap dress. "I'm not here for a room," Ilara said, leaning in, her voice low. "I'm here to see Mr. Croft, Silas Croft." The clerk's demeanor changed instantly. The disdain vanished, replaced by a twitchy fear. "Mr. Croft is not seeing anyone." "Oh, I think he'll see me," Ilara said. She pulled the locket from her dress. She didn't open it. She just let it swing. "You tell him. The heir sent me. And I have what he wants." The clerk was gone in a flash. Ilara waited, her hand in her handbag, gripping the Colt. This was the gamble. Coyote. Jim had said Black was on the payroll. But who was really in charge? Slade had answered to Croft. Ilara was betting that Black did too. She was betting that Croft, a man of ego and power, would want to see the woman who had killed his best enforcer and evaded his best tracker. The clerk returned, pale. "Mr. Croft's suite. 3rd floor, room 301. We'll see you." Ilara walked up the carpeted stairs. This was it, the belly of the beast. She knocked. The door was opened by a mountain of a man in a 3-piece suit. He frisked her, found the Colt, and took it. "She's clean," he grunted. Ilara walked in. The room was filled with plush velvet furniture, crystal glasses, and the thick, expensive smoke of a Cuban cigar. Sitting in a high-backed leather chair, staring out the window at the town he owned, was Silas Croft. He was not a big man. He was small, impeccably dressed, with thin greying hair and the soft, pale hands of a man who had never shoveled, built, or bled. "Mrs. Vance," he said, not turning. His voice was like Slade's, educated, smooth. "You have caused me an extraordinary amount of trouble. Slade was expensive." "He was also clumsy," Ilara said, her voice shaking only slightly. Croft turned. He smiled. It was a reptile's smile. "So it seems. You've met my tracker, I assume. No one's seen Coyote Jim in 2 days. I am impressed. And you?" He gestured to her dress. "A bold choice." "I'm a businesswoman," Ilara said. "I'm here to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Croft laughed. "My dear, you are in no position to negotiate. You are in my hotel, surrounded by my men. And you're still missing your ledger," Ilara said. Croft's smile vanished. The Navajo boy, Where is he?" "Dead," Ilara lied. "The desert took him, but not before he told me everything." "A pity," Croft said, without a trace of pity. "And the key?" "I have it," Ilara said. "The key, the map. Right here." She touched the locket. "You are a fool, Mrs. Vance. You should have just given it to Slade." "He didn't ask for the key," Ilara said. "He asked for the boy. You want the key. But Elias, he wanted me to have the ledger." "Elias," Croft sighed, pouring himself a brandy. "Your husband was a brilliant man, and a sentimental one. He believed in partnership, in fairness." "There is no such thing in this territory, Mrs. Vance. There is only what you can take and what you can hold. I took. He could not hold." "He held on to that ledger," Ilara said. "And now you think you will? What is your offer, Mrs. Vance? Before I have my man, Arthur, break every bone in your body to get that key." "My offer is this," Ilara said, her heart hammering. "I don't have the key, not anymore. I'm not a fool. I gave it to someone you can't touch, an associate. He is at the Wells Fargo right now. He is opening box 217. Croft's face went white. "He has instructions," Ilara lied, praying her voice was steady. "If I am not back at the flophouse in the barrio in 1 hour, he is to take the ledger, directly to the U.S. Marshal's office." It was a perfect bluff. Croft stared at her. He was calculating. Did he believe her? "You're lying," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Am I?" Ilara said. "Why else would I walk in here? Why else would I, a saloon girl, be at the Wells Fargo? I was casing it. My partner, he's a professional. He's opening it right now." Croft slammed his glass down. "Arthur, get Sheriff Black. Now. Get everyone to the Wells Fargo. I want that box. I want the man. Go. Go." The mountain of a man, Arthur, ran from the room. Croft turned back to Ilara. His face was a mask of fury. You will sit here, and we will wait. And if you are lying, I'm not," Ilara said. And then, from the street, came the sound of a gunshot. Then another. Shouting, Croft ran to the window. "What in God's name?" Ilara didn't wait. While Croft was at the window, she ran to the door. "Arthur!" Croft yelled, turning. "Stop her!" But Arthur was gone. Croft was alone. He grabbed a letter opener from his desk and lunged at her. Ilara, the woman who had dragged a 170-pound man, hauled water, and chopped wood for a year, met him head-on. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, and brought her knee up into his stomach. The small, pale man crumpled, gasping. Ilara grabbed his own, very expensive, mother-of-pearl-handled revolver from his desk drawer. "This," she said, "is for Elias." She didn't shoot him. She pistol-whipped him, once, hard, across the temple. Silas Croft, the king of the San Pedro Valley, collapsed onto his expensive Persian rug. Ilara Vance ran out of the room, down the stairs, and into the chaos she had created. The street was madness. Her bluff had worked better than she could have imagined. Croft's men, led by Arthur and a red-faced, furious Sheriff Josiah Black, had descended on the Wells Fargo. They hadn't knocked. They had burst in, guns drawn, screaming for a man who didn't exist. The bank's armed guards, thinking it was a robbery, had opened fire. Now Congress Street was a full-blown gun battle. Men were shooting from rooftops, from behind wagons. Sheriff Black was trying to restore order. But he was the order, and he was working for the robbers. It was a circular firing squad. Ilara slipped out of the Criterion, keeping to the wall, the stolen revolver heavy in her hand. She saw Arthur, the big man, get cut down by a blast from a Wells Fargo guard's shotgun. She saw Sheriff Black shoot the guard. "He's on the payroll! The box!" Black was screaming. "Get to the vault! Get box 217. Ilara didn't run away. She ran toward the bank. While the entire town was looking at the front door, she went around the back, to the alley. She smashed a window and climbed in. She was in the manager's office. It was empty. The gunfire was deafening, coming from the main lobby. She knew where the vault was. She had to get there first. She slipped into the lobby. It was filled with smoke and the screams of the wounded. Sheriff Black and 2 of Croft's men were using the main desk as cover, firing at the last bank guard, who was holed up in the teller's cage. Elara raised her pistol. She didn't aim for Black. She aimed for the chandelier above him. Crack! The bullet hit the chain. The massive brass and crystal chandelier crashed down, crushing one of Croft's men and sending Black and the other scrambling. "Who the hell?" Black yelled, his face covered in plaster. "Sheriff!" Elara yelled. "You're under arrest!" He stared at her. The cheap yellow dress. The wild hair. "You, the woman. You're supposed to be at the hotel." "Plans changed," Elara said. She ran for the vault. The door was open. It was chaos. She had seconds. "Box 217. 217, she muttered, scanning the wall. "There you are, you bitch!" The last of Croft's men was on her. He grabbed her, spinning her around. Elara fired, but the shot went wide. He slammed her against the wall of boxes. "The key! Give me the key!" "Here!" Elara spat and head-butted him. His nose broke with a wet, crunching sound. He staggered back, and Elara brought the heavy pistol down on his head. He dropped. She turned. "Key. Locket." She pulled the locket from her dress. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely fit the key into the lock. Click. She pulled the metal box out. It was heavy. She opened it. It wasn't just a ledger. It was Elias's wedding ring, which he'd lost. It was a letter addressed to her, and it was a thick, leather-bound ledger. "Drop it, Elara." Sheriff Josiah Black was standing in the vault doorway. His face was bleeding. His uniform was torn. His gun was aimed at her heart. "It's over," he panted. You've cost a lot of good men their lives today." "They weren't good men," Elara said, her hand closing around the ledger. "And neither are you. You're just a whore. You wear a badge, but you're just Silas Croft's $2 whore." Black's face went purple. "Give me the box." "This box?" Elara said. "This proves Croft murdered my husband. It proves he's stolen from the Navajo. It proves you're his partner." "It proves nothing if you're dead," Black snarled, "and I'll enjoy it." He cocked the hammer. "No." A shot. Black staggered. He looked down. A small smoking hole had appeared in his chest. He turned. Thomas Begay was leaning in the doorway, his arm propped against the frame. He was holding the tiny 2-shot Derringer. "That," Tom panted, "was for my father." Black looked at him, then at Elara. He raised his gun. Elara didn't hesitate. She fired Croft's pistol. Crack, crack, crack. 3 shots in the center of his chest. Sheriff Josiah Black, a man who had sold his soul for a piece of the San Pedro Valley, fell, dead, his eyes wide with the surprise of final justice. Elara rushed to Tom, who collapsed. "I told you to stay," she choked, holding him. I know," he coughed. I heard the gunshots. I'm a terrible partner, always late." "No," Elara said, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the dust and gunpowder. "You're right on time." "Is it?" "It's here," Elara said, clutching the ledger. "It's all here. Sirens, men shouting, the U.S. Marshals, the real law. The gunfire had finally brought them." Elara stood up, holding the bloody ledger in one hand and helping her wounded partner with the other. She walked out of the smoking, shattered bank, past the body of the corrupt sheriff and into the sunlight to meet them. She was no longer a widow. She was an avenger. And she had the truth. The arrest of Silas Croft wasn't a quiet affair. when the U.S. Marshals, led by a grizzled deputy named Harlan, stormed the Criterion Hotel, they found the most powerful man in the territory tied to a chair with velvet curtains. Elara had, in her rage, forgotten she'd left him unconscious. He'd woken up, tried to escape, and a fire in the lobby, started by the gunfight, had trapped him. The trial was the talk of the Arizona Territory. It was held in Prescott, not Tucson, to avoid a biased jury, which really meant to avoid a jury Croft owned. Elara Vance was the star witness. She sat in the courtroom, not in a yellow saloon dress or dusty rags, but in a simple, severe black suit. She looked every bit the frontier widow, but when she spoke, her voice didn't tremble. It was cold, clear, and precise. She presented the ledger. Elias's Devil's Ledger, the newspapers called it. It was a masterpiece of cold-blooded accounting. Elias had used a simple code. On one side, Croft's public books, cattle sales, land purchases, feed. On the other, the real books, Slade, 500, the date of Harrison Begay's death. Sheriff Black, 1000, the date Elias was stampeded. Bribes to land agents, payments to Coyote Jim. It was all there, a detailed, itemized list of an empire built on murder. But the most damning piece of evidence was Elias's letter to her. The prosecutor read it aloud. "My dearest Elara," it began, "if you are reading this, I have failed. Not as a husband, I hope, but as a partner. I fell in love with a woman who I knew was stronger than I. I write this not to confess, but to equip. I am in business with Harrison Begay. We have found a new future, a place of water and peace. But men like Silas Croft cannot abide peace. They see it as a weakness," he went on, detailing the water rights, the map, the key. "The key," he wrote, "is for the ledger. It is my insurance. But the locket, my love, is for you. It is Spanish silver. It is old, but it is, like you, unbreakable. Do not avenge me, Elara. Survive me. Take this and build the world we dreamed of, the world Tom Begay and I saw. Your strength is the rock. Build on the rock." Elara wept on the stand, not for the cameras, but for the husband she finally understood. He hadn't left her. He had armed her. Silas Croft was found guilty of murder, of fraud, of conspiracy. His empire was broken by a woman's testimony and a dead man's accounting. He was sentenced to hang. 6 months later. The Jackrabbit Springs way station was no longer a ruin. It was a construction site. The fire had burned away the old rotten wood, but the adobe walls and the stone foundation, the rock, had remained. Elara Vance stood on the new porch, handing a cup of coffee to Thomas Begay. Tom was walking, albeit with a limp he would have for the rest of his life. He was no longer a hunted heir. He was a founder. Using the map from the locket and the legal, ironclad claims from Elias's safety deposit box, they had secured the Agua Escondida. The Begay-Vance Water and Land Company was real. Miners, ranchers, and Navajo families who had been pushed to the brink by Croft's monopoly were now flocking to their banner. The new well at Jackrabbit Springs, dug where Elias had always said there was water, was gushing clean, cold water. It was the first stop on a new, thriving trade route. Elara was no longer a lone woman. She was the matriarch of a new community. "The first pipeline survey is done," Tom said, looking at the papers in his hand. "We can have water running to the Red Mesa lands by spring." "Elias would have liked that," Elara said, sipping her coffee. She wore the silver locket every day. "He would have," Tom agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. The land was still harsh, the territory was still wild, but it was theirs. "The past," Tom said quietly, "is a heavy thing to carry." Elara looked at him. "It is," she agreed. but it's also a foundation. She looked out at the bustling, hopeful, noisy settlement that had risen from the ashes of her past. "Let's get to work," she said. "We have a world to build." In the Wild West, justice wasn't always a marshal's badge. Sometimes it was a widow's rage. Sometimes it was a dead man's ledger. Elara Vance and Thomas Begay didn't just get revenge. They built a future. They proved that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find its way to the surface, just like water in the desert. They took the evil that Silas Croft built, and they turned it into a foundation for a new kind of life, built on the rock of a good man's memory and a strong woman's will. This story is a reminder that the strongest thing in the world is the truth. If this story of justice and resilience moved you, please help us tell more. Hit that like button if you believe in karma. Share this video with someone who needs a story of strength, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring the bell, so you never miss a story of the real, untamed West. Thank you for watching.